This is breaking news.
Right now, police are giving an update after 2 police officers were shot responding to a call in Prospect Lefferts Gardens. Let's go there now.
Stay on topic for these two. As we all met here last week, we talked about the release of the discipline database, and, you know, outside of it crashing today because everybody hit it at once, I think it's actually still holding up, and we actually did get it out on Monday. And what we'll do for frequent flyers and regular police headquarters presses, tomorrow we'll probably get you back here and do a lesson on how to use it from the people who built it, so you can get the maximum benefit out of it. But for now, we'll get to these current cases, and Police Commissioner Shea, Rodney Harrison, Juanita Holmes, and Kevin Maloney from Force Investigation Division that handles any investigations involving shots fired at or by police. Okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined here on my left, Chief Juanita Holmes, Chief Rodney Harrison, and Chief Kevin Maloney. First, we're going to discuss the police-involved shooting that occurred yesterday evening in the 71st Precinct, where a man with an illegal firearm shot and wounded his roommate and subsequently shot 2 of our police officers, both of whom narrowly avoided being killed. We'll also talk about another horrific case when Chief Harrison gets up here, that of a 10-year-old Aiden Wolf in Harlem, whose mother's boyfriend has been now charged with murdering him over the weekend. Chief Harrison will get into details on both of those cases. What last night reminds us is 2 things. Number 1, there is no routine call. And number 2, police officers have split-second decisions to make life and death circumstances. We have seen this far too often lately. Whether it's the 105 Precinct in Queens, November 24th, where police officers with a domestic violence victim are both shot when the perpetrator responds back to the home. Or a month later in Brooklyn in the 77th Precinct, again, police officers in uniform, 4 of them, standing in front of a building with a domestic violence victim when the perpetrator responds back to the scene and shots ring out. In that circumstance, the officer was saved by his department-issued vest. And more recently, a quote-unquote routine graffiti arrest turns violent when the perpetrator turns and begins to engage the officers with gunfire. Despite these risks, the men and women of the New York City Police Department put on their uniform every day and fulfill their oath to keep the people of this great city safe. And I thank them for it. And in my opinion, they do it better than any other police department in this country. Rodney?
Good afternoon. Commissioner, thank you for your leadership and the statements that you made regarding the men and women of this police department. This case is currently being reviewed by our Force Investigation Division under the leadership of Kevin Maloney. Just please understand and be aware that the information I'm going to provide is subject to change. But this is what I have. Last night, at approximately 9:15 p.m., 1 sergeant and 3 police officers assigned to the 71st Precinct in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, responded to a 911 call for a male shot inside of 42 Hawthorne Street, apartment 2L. For a little context on the building, apartment 2L is located at the top of a narrow flight of stairs, which force our officers to approach in a single file line. As the officers ascended the stairs, the subject exited his apartment wearing a blanket over his shoulders. The officers then engaged him in conversation regarding the 911 calls for a male shot. At this time, our perpetrator pulled out a .38 caliber revolver from under the blanket and displayed it toward the officers. The officers drew their service weapons and stated multiple times for him to drop his firearm. The perpetrator ignored the multiple commands and fired his revolver 3 times towards the officers, who were approximately 10 feet away. The police officer who was first in the single file line instinctively turned his body, bladed himself like this, and was able to avoid a direct impact to his bullet-resistant vest. The bullet grazed the front of his vest, which struck his body-worn camera magnet and lodged inside of his uniform duty jacket. If you just take a look at the jacket to my left, it grazed him and got stuck on the right side of part of his jacket. One of those 3 fired rounds also struck the 4th officer on line, grazing him in his left shin. I'm now going to show you some video that kind of captures the incident at hand.
What's going on? Did you call?
Yeah, I gave you a call.
What's going on?
I'm fed up with all you motherfuckers, man. What you got going on? Oh, wake up, Sister Issue now?
What's going on?
Yo, Sister Issue, bro!
Come here.
You got some misunderstanding, man. You sure you got your bird on? You know the guy's been on, man. All that stupid shit, right?
You called?
Huh?
Did you call?
Yo, this phone, girl.
Oh, yo, put the gun down.
Thereafter, the perpetrator then retreated into his apartment and was not struck by any of the rounds. The perpetrator then barricaded himself inside of the apartment. The officers on the scene, not knowing who was behind the door, turned this incident into a hostage negotiation situation, and then requested our emergency service unit, who were able to safely remove the perpetrator from the apartment without any incident. During the course of the investigation, it was determined that the victim of the 911 call is our perpetrator's roommate and sustained a gunshot wound to each of his legs. The victim was removed to Kings County Hospital and is in stable condition. A .38 caliber revolver, an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, and a shotgun was recovered inside the apartment. Those are the photographs there to your right, or to your left, excuse me. The 2 officers struck were removed to a local hospital for evaluation and are in stable condition. Our perpetrator was removed to Brookdale Hospital for evaluation and is currently under arrest. This incident, I'm sure everybody can understand, could have been a lot worse. By the grace of God, our heroic officers will be going home. I'll open up the floor for any questions.
I'm sorry?
Are you going to release that video?
Yeah.
We will be releasing the video, yes. That I don't know, but in short term, we will absolutely be releasing it.
Do you have data on number of times that officers were shot in 2020 and 2019 and year-to-date versus last year?
I'll get you that.
Okay.
We'll get you that information.
Is the impression that this is an increasing trend, and do we have any ideas about why? What the circumstances?
Yeah, I had the occasion recently to invite a number of officers for a luncheon upstairs in this building that had been shot in the line of duty last year. The answer to your question is far too often. Far too often, and you know, what's behind it? There's probably many things behind it, but it's something that I think we could all agree one is too many, and it is happening, as I said in my remarks, and as Rodney echoes and Juanita echoes. Far too often we get that call, and there is nothing else that compares when that phone rings with that call.
Hey, Rocco.
What was the initial shooting about, and how many cops fired, how many shots?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kevin Maloney answer that question regarding their relationship. They are roommates and they also are co-workers at the same time.
Do you know why he fired at her?
The case is still ongoing, but I'll have Kev talk about the shots that were fired by the officers.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, Rocco. So there were 2 discharging members of service. One sergeant fired 16 times, and a police officer fired 7 times. There was 2 911 calls that brought us to that location. Those 911 calls, one was for a male shot. Upon arrival at the location, that was our male shot up on the 2nd floor, which was the chief said, the roommate, co-worker of our subject at the location. They've lived together for at least a year and a half at this point.
You said 16 on the sergeant?
16 for the sergeant, 7 for the police officer, yes.
And could you or maybe someone else just explain how they came to get him to surrender? How long was he inside barricaded?
The subject goes back inside the apartment after the shots are fired. Our emergency service team, they tack up at the location. They make their way into the apartment. From the time the first 911 call comes in until he's in custody is about an hour and 3 minutes. He goes upstairs into the apartment. They find him inside the apartment. They take him into custody inside the apartment.
Okay, if we have nothing else on this, or we'll take the last one on this, I'd like to move to that other case so we can keep going.
Chief, is there any history, prior 911 calls from that department, history of domestic violence between the roommates or anything like that? Would there be an indication that there was any prior incident there other than the shooting?
I don't have anything, Kev. No. We don't have any other previous complaints. Any other questions? Okay, so I think there's a concern about the incident that happened over in this confines of the 32nd Precinct. On March 6th, about 2 p.m., PSA 6 officers responded to the St. Nicholas development for an unconscious child. Upon arrival, officers encountered our victim, a 10-year-old male who was unresponsive. EMS performed CPR and transported the victim to Harlem Hospital, but unfortunately, he was pronounced deceased at around 3:30 p.m. The victim was found with extensive bruising to his face, his extremities, and all over the body. Some injuries were old, but others were recent. At the hospital, investigators were informed that the victim's demise was caused by a fatal child abuse syndrome. His mother has not been interviewed by the investigators yet. Her boyfriend, Ryan Coda, indicated that he found the victim unconscious and he called 911. Mr. Coda has 3 prior arrests and was placed under arrest and is charged for murder to this victim. His last arrest is in December in Brooklyn, where he assaulted the mother of his children in their presence, and an ACS case was opened for that case. The defendant has not been arraigned as of yet. There are no prior 911 calls at the location that would indicate any child abuse. Our victim's mother does have one prior ACS case for child neglect back in 2010 after the victim was born. The victim did not have any other siblings and no other children were inside the house. I'll open up the floor for any questions regarding that incident. Tina? Yeah, it's actually several different mothers or several different other victims that he's assaulted, but no complaints with this woman. I don't have that information in front of me, but I'll get it back to you, Tina.
Any details about what was fatal or when the fatal injuries were delivered?
Yeah, so once again, it's still being investigated by the 3-2 Detective Squad. So once again, once we get more information, we'll share it out to the media. Hey, Rocco?
Chief, is it clear if the mother was there when the child fatal blow was struck? And at this point, is she someone who is, it looked like she was sort of under his spell, so to speak, or is she part of this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rocco. I don't have the answer. Once again, is this Jimmy Leo, who's the squad commander of the 32nd Precinct, 32nd Squad, is still investigating the case regarding her location or any involvement with this incident.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I got it.